Doris. Thank you for joining me. How's New Zealand?
It's a beautiful day. We're just beginning our autumn. Nice and cool in the night and lovely and warm in the daytime.
You are running and you founded the New Zealand Fashion Museum.
Indeed.
You started this journey many decades ago as a teacher.
Yes. Yes, so that is my training. So my training is in social anthropology and in teaching. My non-training is in clothing making. The Fashion Museum has brought all of those things together. So I taught for some years at primary school in an inner city school, so very diverse school. Then I travelled, New Zealand's a long way away from anywhere. Most New Zealanders, young people, go to Europe to get some experience of the wider world. So I went there, I taught there too at the Rudolf Steiner School, but always alongside my teaching, I was making clothing. And in the 1980s, it became possible to have a career making clothing. And so I left teaching and had established my own fashion label, which I had for 26 years. When I closed my label in 2008, I went back to university to do a bit of study for another challenge, a new challenge. And the study I did was a postgraduate course, an honours degree in museums and cultural heritage. And that really was the impetus to establish the Fashion Museum.
The museum is really a learner-focused environment.
Yes. Well, I think all museums should be. Museums can be very shuttered, can be very closed. They can be up on a hill and inaccessible for ordinary people. And I wanted really to use clothing. Everybody wears clothing. Everybody understands clothing. It's a wonderful vehicle to have all sorts of conversations about our society, about our language, about sciences, the improvements in technology, all of the changes. You can do maths, with pattern making. So it's just this wonderful resource to have all sorts of conversations. And so I wanted to provide a platform to make those conversations accessible to everyone so that we reached out into the community instead of waiting for the community to come to us, to a big building somewhere or a collection somewhere.
You also created a museum model that is responsive to questions and concerns of the day. You really care about what happens. You're not creating a void.
That's right. Well, I think that's really important too with a museum. A museum shouldn't be this fusty old place. It should be relevant to people. And having the opportunity or having a platform, a way of being able to do that. We don't have a collection of garments or objects. We borrow garments and objects to do our storytelling. We don't have a building that we need to pay the rates and the electricity and the rent and everything on. We don't have any obligations to either a collection or to a building, and so we can do whatever we like. It's been quite wonderful to just see what's happening in society, thinking about the fashion stories that can help people understand what's going on now, or help people question what's going on now, just to make us more thoughtful, really. Some very good examples of that are indeed the second exhibition that we did, which was called Black in Fashion. And it was about our passion for wearing black. We are known for our blackness. That exhibition was inspired by New Zealand hosting the Rugby World Cup here in 2011. For people who don't know what rugby is a New Zealand sport. It's not like football that's played everywhere in the world. It's a smaller pool of countries that play it, but they're South Africa and France and New Zealand, but even America and Japan and places are playing it now. But it's still a little bit smaller probably than football. But it meant that we were going to be hosting people from all over the world. and also that our city would be buzzing with people in black and thinking about black. And so we curated this exhibition, just questioning our attraction and our connection with black and black clothing. And it was wonderful because we had the exhibition right in the heart of the city, so right where everybody was, in a brand new building that was black down the bottom of the city. And we published a book about the wearing of black, so with all different aspects of wearing black. So talking to a music specialist about wearing black for musicians. We talked to a sports specialist about our history of wearing black in sport. We had a chapter by a Maori, an Indigenous writer curator who looked at the early history of black, so the black in relationship to the Indigenous people of New Zealand in Victorian times, so early New Zealand. So from a number of, in film, the wearing of black in film. So from a number of aspects, we published a book, or it was actually published by Penguin, and it was called very simply Black, and canvassed those things. And if you like, I can read a little piece of it, and I've marked it so I can find it. So in September 2011, rugby fans of the world watched New Zealand as it hosted the Rugby World Cup. And our national team stood to face this international sporting challenge dressed all in black. For many, the All Blacks represent an idealised incarnation of New Zealand's physical prowess. However, our sporting codes are often framed in black, in the team names, in the colours of their uniforms, and even by the colour of their boats. The black singlet for the Olympic athlete, the black cap for the cricketers, the tall blacks for the basketballers, the black sticks, our hockey players, and Black Magic, that wonderful yacht that won awards all over the world. All are appellations that engender great pride and sometimes, if they don't do well, great shame. And they all speak for our collective New Zealand sporting identity. This colour, which we propose as being expressive of our national identity, is not restricted to our sporting endeavours. Efforts to create an identity internationally as a clean, green and 100% pure New Zealand are articulated in tourism advertising. However, the colour that they choose for this branding and marketing campaign is not green, as you'd expect. It's black. The language that it uses to describe our creative output also references a black psyche. Our films are said to be brooding, dark and uneasy. Our fashion has been described as dark and intellectual. And in the visual arts, New Zealand represented itself at the 2011 Venice Biennale, the so-called Olympics of the art world, with a Michael Parakorfai sculptural installation that included 2 grand pianos supporting 2 bulls, which were all fabricated in black bronze. The pervasiveness of black in the representations of ourselves is undeniable, but the question arises, is this merely an accident of history, or is there something fundamental in the New Zealand character that makes the colour a natural fit?
Black is really a current that goes through the culture, through the land, through the psyche of the nation.
Yes, yes, yes. And it was quite wonderful talking to people about that. So in an exhibition, people engage in conversation with you, but also with each other. It was quite wonderful to have people thinking about that too, because if you ask people what, someone's wearing black, and you ask them why, they have all different. Some people think black's very stylish, and other people think it's very easy because you don't have to think. You just put on black and and go out the door, and your black goes with black. It was really wonderful to just have those conversations with people. Yeah. So.
You are wearing black.
And also black and white. I am, although less so as I'm getting a bit greyer. Black has become quite hard, so quite harsh. So I often wear it with something else. But yeah, but I do love black. Yeah.
This museum provides lots of opportunities for learning. you're doing walks, you're doing
Yes.
open days, you're offering
Yep.
workshops. And for a virtual museum, this is a lot of activity.
Yes, well, it is how the virtual museum generates its content. We generate our content by staging exhibitions and events. In those conversations, we gather materials and then we can share what we have learnt. We share that in the virtual museum. Our museum is unusually www.nzfashionmuseum.org.nz. That's our museum, that's our building, that's all we are. Well, not true, because we also have a very strong social media presence, but the museum, our building, is www. That's us. Yeah.
In a way, you are ahead with this museum because the future is a more virtual world, yes. And you have created a space that it's much easier to access for everyone on this planet.
Yes, that's true. I always tell people it's the only museum you can go to in your pajamas.
You are doing pop-up exhibitions as well.
Yes. I think we've done 16 so far in the 12 years that we've been going. And we do them, that we tour them as well. So we create an exhibition, like the Black exhibition, for example, that also, after it was here in Auckland, it went down to Wellington and had a season down there too. So we were able to share it with the people in Wellington. And many of our exhibitions have also toured. And actually currently, because that was one of the things currently, the walking exhibition. So we curated an exhibition that I suppose is inspired by place. In fact, we're doing quite a lot inspired by her, but it's inspired by place. So it was inspired by the Auckland Central City. People were unaware that was actually where clothing was made for years and years and years. The fabric wholesalers, the factories, the notion suppliers and things, they were all based in the central city. So people would come into the city in the morning and work in the city in a clothing factory and then go home again, or go and shop in the shops too. But to create that sort of awareness, also the city, there's been quite a lot of upheavals in cities, of course, we're actually currently having a train line put underground, and so there's been quite a lot of disruption. And so anything that can help people engage with the city, not just at this level, but looking up and looking back and thinking about the place that they live in, is extremely valuable. And so we developed this walk, which looked at businesses that were within a 5-kilometre radius of the site that we held the exhibition in. And the site we held the exhibition in was our oldest department store in the city. We are now developing a similar walk, but for Wellington. And Wellington is the capital city of New Zealand. We are developing this walking tour also for them. And if we can manage that at this distance, we'll also do one for Dunedin and for Christchurch. So it's an idea that just has resonance. I mean, we could come, where are you, which city are you? And we could come and do one for you too, and talk about the city and the fashion that's happened in your city.
I did watch one of your walks, and what I really loved was that you were reminding the people also a lot about the architecture.
Yes, because it's interesting how you would have a shop front downstairs, but upstairs was the workroom, and that's where so you could choose something, and if the hem needed to be taken up, the woman upstairs would be able to come down and pin the hem for you and make that alteration, and then you could take it away. So it was a time, I suppose part of it is that, I suppose, the philosophy of the Fashion Museum too, of just helping people to see the value in clothing, to regain that value in clothing. Fast fashion has taken away people's appreciation and value of clothing. part of our aim, our ambition is to just get people to be more considerate, more thoughtful, loving their clothes again, really, too. We do quite a lot of things that help people love their clothes. That all just fits with that thinking, too. So looking at the architecture, looking at how things are made, I suppose helping people just, again, appreciate things and see value.
You have done actually a lot more, Doris. I did look at your clothes and I looked at your style. Yes, they are clothes, but what you did was you humanized them. They look alive. And as you
Thank you.
brought into the discussion that model where we consider our clothes our best friends, you elevated the bond between us and our clothes to a completely different level.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that is what we aim to do. So I'm very happy that if you visit our website and look at what we've done, that you can see that there. That's excellent. Thank you.
Your style is very free. We don't feel constrained in any way. We are not feeling caged.
That is indeed also, a very deliberate strategy. So to put things out in places where the barrier to enjoying it or to participating is as low as possible. That's also one of the reasons that we use our social media. We use our social media to connect with people, with day-to-day life for people too. So we share knitting patterns, an exhibition that's happening somewhere. There's a new book that's just come out, and so we'll be showing some of the imagery out of that new book about fashion from the 70s and 80s from a particular collection. But there's also a lovely group of young people who have created their own fashion week. So they're young people who are making fashion, but not in the conventional through the conventional channels, and they have organised a series of fashion shows they did last year, and they're doing it again this year. So we will promote that for them too, because we want people to know about what's happening, to engage with what's happening, and to appreciate what's happening, I suppose. Yeah.
Let's talk about your collaborations, because you work with photographers.
We have worked from the get-go with a photographer who documents the objects that we've had in our exhibition. So when we have an exhibition, the first thing we do is shout out. I call it shout out. I don't know if it's called shout out in other parts of the world, but we do a shout out through our social media, but also through conventional media if we can access that, and we often can because we have good relationships. And so we say, for example, we've got an exhibition coming up this year about knitting or crafting things with fibre. That's the one we're developing at the moment. We will do a shout out and say who has got some knitting that they've done themselves, or a piece of knitting that was done for them that they've just kept for years, even though they don't fit it, a special piece of knitting. So we'll go and try and find garments that people have made. I know that people will have things like christening blankets from their families, so that'll be 100 years old or something like that. So they will be out there. A Christmas jumper that Nana knitted, when you were 5, and you've just always kept that whole range. So we'll go and ask people, do you have that? Can we borrow it to show in the exhibition? And we'll also ask for people who have particular skills that they might like to come to our exhibition and share with people. So people who can perhaps crochet, or people who are very good at doing invisible repairs on knitwear, or people who are very good at doing visible repairs on knitwear. So just people who have expertise and passion for knitting, to see where our community is, to try and bring them together for a project. So that's actually how we work. We've seen young people sitting around in the park knitting. And then I say to them, well, so where did you learn that? And they just say, oh, yeah, no, on YouTube. So they've learned to knit because they just want to be making something. So I can see that it's a thing for young people at the moment to be able to craft things themselves. So let's go and talk about that, about the history of that crafting, and share some expertise. So that's the object of the exercise, and we will work with some premises in the city. There are some empty shops in the city. We will tap them on the shoulder and say, look, that's empty. Can we please use that for 3 weeks and have an exhibition in here of knitwear and wools and workshops? We will work with the city council because they appreciate activations in the city, and we'll say, we want to do this. Will you publicise it for us? Will you give us some money to do it? Because that's an essential part as well. That's how we operate, really. That's how we do it. And you were asking me about photographers. So we will get these garments, we'll curate this exhibition, and then we photograph things. We photograph the objects that were in our exhibition, and we have a photographer in the studio. We record all of those things, and then they go into the museum with their story. So that's one photographer we work with. We also work with photographers on promotional images. So for both of these two exhibitions, actually, Moana Currents, we had a series of, so for Moana Currents, we worked with a professional photographer to make make some promotional imagery for the publication of the garments that were in the exhibition. We also worked with a photographer at the beach, also for promotional imagery. So for the cover of the book, but also for some of the content in the book. We actually did an exhibition on New Zealand photographers. So the history of New Zealand photography, fashion photography.
We need to talk a little bit about the At the Beach, because this specific exhibition covers 100 years of swimwear.
Yes. Yeah, that was a wonderful I love this exhibition. Also, all of the conversations that we are having are about us as New Zealanders. So we're not we of course reference how we refer to the world, but it is about our own stories, of our fashion sensibility in Aotearoa, in New Zealand. And one of the things that I often tell people, particularly in Europe, in Italy or somewhere, where people are so immaculately dressed, everything is perfect. We never quite manage that in New Zealand. Always, at a wedding, even the man he'll have got the suit, and he'll have got the shirt, and he'll have got the tie and the shoes. And for some reason, I don't know, he probably can't do up that top button because it just feels too constrained. And so the tie just sits a little bit off to the side. We never get that sharpness and that polish that Europe has. And I think the beach is the problem. At the beaches, we all want to just be at the beach. We just want to be relaxed, and so we find it very hard to do up that top button. So I could read you a little piece from here if you'd like. Yep. So this is one of the reasons why we did the exhibition. So when Māori charted the coastline of New Zealand, they were sketching an outline that would become the profile of our land, recording and fixing its identity. With a coastline in excess of 15,000 kilometres, where no one lives more than 130 kilometres from the sea, New Zealanders are island people, and never far from the edge. It is inevitable that this geography should play a part in defining who we are and how we stand in the world. At the Beach explores how our relationship to the coast has impacted on who we are and how we give expression to that identity through what we wear. The social sciences talk about the spaces on the edge of a society as a sort of no man's land, an area of transition and change. If you think of your home between outside and inside, there's usually a porch or a veranda. Here you take off or put on your coat, change your shoes, leave or take up your bag. You are in limbo, neither inside nor out, although you can see both from where you stand, and anything could happen. The beach too is such a space, at the border between land and sea, where ordinary rules do not apply. In this marginal zone, we have a vantage point where we are free to imagine new possibilities. Crossing this threshold is something we have all done as migrants to this land. We have separated ourselves from what we knew at home, arrived here, and stood on that literal or figurative beach. And with a clear view in both directions, we have crossed over to embrace this place. It is also on this terrain of the beach that many of the rules and mores of society are contested through what we wear and how we behave. The beach not only encapsulates change, but it also inadvertently influences it, permeating our everyday existence. By looking at what we wore at the beach, we can chart some of those changes and identify the impact of the coastal margin and beach cultures on our national fashion identity, which we did in this fabulous exhibition. This is one I kept this one. I had picked this book actually because it was one of my favourite exhibitions, and I've put some photos in the folder for you that you can share, but it was one of my favourite exhibitions because we curated it into the Maritime Museum. The Maritime Museum is full of boats and sails and mastheads and, you know, just all sorts of sailing things. And we just put people in there with clothes on, with swimwear on, and beach sundresses and sun hats and beach towels and fishing rods. And yeah, so we just we put the people back into the Maritime Museum. I just loved that. It was fabulous. Yeah.
You did a major exhibition on LJ.
Ah, yes, that was our first exhibition, and in a way, it was sort of a trial to see what whether the Fashion Museum would work, and so we did indeed an exhibition about LJ, and LJ was a fashion label that operated in New Zealand from 1938 to 1988, so 50 years of fashion, and in telling that fashion story, we could tell 50 years of social change, really. That period, and I think you'll probably find that Canada was the same, in Australia and lots of places where we had import restrictions, which, you know, and huge tariffs on things coming into the country. So we had a protected industry. There was this flourishing fashion manufacturing, well, all sorts of manufacturing, including fashion. LJ was a fashion manufacturer. He started out just making what most people wore at that time, you know, house dresses, just cotton and viscose house dresses, Japanese cotton and viscose. Gus Fisher, whose brother owned the company, and he took it over from his brother, Gus just loved beautiful clothes. He had already, as a young boy, drawn things, and his mother had her dressmaker make them up for him. Anyhow, he loved beautiful things. When for the company, he went traveling to Europe and just went to fabric wholesalers with beautiful fabrics and brought back beautiful fabrics and started making coats and more fashion wear rather than utilitarian wear. Because he was shopping in these high-end fabric wholesalers, he encountered the people from Christian Dior. And so they said, oh, well, he's buying these good fabrics. He must be a good manufacturer. And they shoulder tapped him and asked him if he would like the license to produce Christian Dior in New Zealand. He leapt at the chance, of course. You know, what could be more elegant, more high fashion than Christian Dior. And so I think he had the second license. I think the first license was somewhere in South America, and I think the second license came here to New Zealand. Every year, Gus would go twice a year to Paris to see the collections and make a selection of the garments that he wanted to produce here. And they would supply the patterns and the materials and the notions, and they would make them up here in New Zealand. They were line for line reproductions of Dior's, but were made here in New Zealand by New Zealand machinists and pattern cutters and all the rest. We could actually produce them quite cheaply here because in the 1960s, the Americans used to come here, the American women would fly here to New Zealand to buy their Dior's from LJ rather than from Paris, because they were cheaper in New Zealand. Same garment, exactly the same fabric, exactly the same, but just less expensive. And so the Americans used to come and buy Dior in New Zealand. So it's a lovely story. The beautiful thing about doing this exhibition was indeed that, that was a test of concept. So we did a shout out for garments when it was in the Auckland newspaper. My telephone rang non-stop for 3 days with people who had kept these garments, because these garments were expensive. People had valued them and kept them for 50 plus years. They had kept these garments. And so when I asked, they said, yes, I've got here. And so we were able to show them in the exhibition. And the beauty of these garments was that they had belonged to someone, so they could tell me where they bought it, how much they paid for it, where they wore it, the whole story of the life of this coat or dress or suit, which was just absolutely wonderful. And you could see in the exhibition too the change, particularly actually coats. If you think about coats in the 1930s and 40s, people didn't have, your heating in your house was an open fire. There wasn't central heating really, and it was cold outside, so people wore warm, heavy woolen coats. So these beautiful coats were made out of quite heavy materials. And as insulation and things like that improved in homes, you see the clothing become lighter. Also, as technology becomes more advanced, you see the weight of wools becoming lighter as well. And you see in the 1960s all these synthetic fabrics coming in. So people all think, sort of high end and never use synthetics, but they did use synthetics because they were wonderful. You could wash them. And so you could have a pale blue dress. You didn't have to have a black or a dark brown or a grey or whatever. You could have a lovely bright colour, and you could just launder it. So being able to share that story through those 50 years. Also, one of the other lovely garments we had is called a going away outfit. Young people don't really know what a going away outfit is, but and for perhaps other people who don't know what a going away outfit is, when you get married, you have the whites, the formals and the whites. And before you leave on your honeymoon, you go into, a little room somewhere and you put on your going away outfit, which is a day dress, usually with a hat and shoes and a handbag. But it's no longer long. It's usually a short sort of day dress. And so that was a thing. You had a wedding dress and you had a going away dress, And so we had a going away dress. And the woman who loaned it to us still had the receipts from buying it from the Dior salon in Auckland. She wasn't from Auckland, she was from Hamilton. She had come up on a late night shopping to look for something to wear for her going away outfit. And she spent, I think it was about a week and a half salary on this Dior going away dress. Yeah. So, just these wonderful, wonderful stories to have that perspective on the value of clothing. Yeah. So, yeah, it's wonderful.
We need to talk about the drag artists and drag queens.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So that's a new exhibition that we're working on for Pride Festival next year. It's not one I'm curating. So a photographer who has done some work for us to document. She's on our board and she's done some documenting of our garments. So Denise, this is one that she is working on. It's inspired by the Two Fashion exhibition, which is this one here, which is the last exhibition that we did. We talked just now about the LJ. That was our first exhibition. It had a sort of a formality, a conventional exhibition framework, but things have changed in people's appreciation of fashion, in museology, so in museum practice. Things have changed even over the sort of 12 years of our existence. We have moved away from the curated exhibition to an exhibition much more where people have their own voice. So where they are sharing their own stories of fashioning. So that's really a little bit of a sort of a shift that's happened over this time. And so last two exhibitions, so Moana Currents, are curated with a Samoan curator, so telling the story of the influence of our geography, our place within Oceania in how we dress. And then the last exhibition we did was called To Fashion. And To Fashion was an exhibition that was curated by the participants. So the participants in the exhibition dressed themselves, fashioned their identity, fashioned themselves. They dressed the way that they wanted to be seen, and then shared with the audience the story about what they were wearing, but also the story about their relationship to clothing. And the people that were part of that was 12 different people. So it was celebrating our 12 years of existence, but it's a very diverse community. So reflecting the diversity of ethnicities that you find in New Zealand, a diversity of ages. So I think our youngest was 22 or so, and our oldest 82. Men, women, transgender, spectrum of disabled person. Yeah, so just that whole spectrum of people, and we asked them to fashion themselves and to tell us about their relationship with clothing and how they use clothing really. And so from that exhibition, we have seen that we can create a platform, offer a platform that more diverse people can talk about their relationship to clothing. And so this exhibition that's happening during Pride Week in 2026 is being curated by drag artists. They will present themselves and also talk about their relationship to clothing. It's being curated by Denise is photographing, but we have a drag artist as co-curator, and the social media will be run by a drag artist, so somebody from that community, so that we are just providing the platform. They are providing the storytelling. They're sharing their stories.
You adapt the fabric, the textile, to the ability of the person wearing them. And that's how they become one. It becomes their skin. And you pay attention to each person. They are very inclusive. They can be disabled. They can have special abilities. They can be from various backgrounds, and the garments are adapting to them, and the people are adapting to garments.
Yes.
It's a two-way
conversation. Yes. Yeah. No, I love that too. I mean, I think for me, I've always loved clothes, and I can remember even from when I was very little that being very aware, very mindful of what people were wearing, how they were dressed. Also, because I'm the child of Dutch immigrants, and my grandparents used to send clothing from Holland for me and for my siblings, and they were beautiful, but they weren't like the English clothes that my neighbours wore. I just always had that awareness of the expressiveness, I suppose, of clothing, and I want to share that. I want other people to just see how powerful clothing is, and that you can do all sorts of things by I don't know, putting on your bossy shoes or your soft cardigan. There are all sorts of things you can communicate outside, but also inside. You can make yourself powerful. There's one actually which I love too in Moana Currents. This is from the second to last exhibition. I'll just show this photo, and I'll actually send you a copy. This is our Prime Minister. We had a terrorist shooting in Christchurch in 2019. So Jacinda, our Prime Minister, went to Christchurch to meet with these people and wore the hijab. She's not Muslim, but she wanted to express her oneness with these people. So, so you can use, it's a very, very powerful tool, I think, what you wear. Yeah. You're showing respect. You are showing that you understand the importance for Muslim to cover, for modesty, to cover your head, so the clothes are wonderful.
An important thing that we also need to mention is in your open day, you had a lady come in and talk about vintage clothing and how she gave them new life to vintage.
Right. Oh, from Diane. So looking after, yes, yeah. So because we are a digital museum, an online museum, people often say to me, they say, well, I'm curate for the New Zealand Fashion Museum, and I say, oh, where's that? So I say, yeah, we're just online. We're a modern museum. We're just online. We're a virtual museum. Because people always ask that, I thought sometimes you just need to show your face. We created an opportunity to show our face. We are also part of a global network of fashion practitioners, so part of a global network of fashion practitioners and curators and academics who work outside the Western mainstream, I suppose. So people who are working in the decolonial space, or we now call it, in New Zealand, it's called in the re-indigenisation space. So that's where we work. And they have a biannual gathering, a digital gathering, like a conference, a symposium, but it's online. So we're not all travelling. And and each of these places presents something from their own community. So this was our second one, and we had been asked to share about the Fashion Museum because it's a virtual model. It's a decolonial model, really. The conversations that happen in the Fashion Museum are the conversations that come to us from the community. They're not imposed by the museum or by the Western order. We're sharing people's stories. So we were asked to talk about that, and so we had an open day at and the Auckland Central City Library hosted us, so they provided the space, and within that space we showcased really all of the things that we do and that we stand for. So they've got a really good research library which we often use. There are often images in our publications, but also in the Fashion Museum, photos from their heritage collection. When we're writing stories, we always use the library to confirm addresses and dates and things like that. So those sorts of things. But also, it's a wonderful resource when you go to older publications and things too, to see. I love the ads. The ads tell you everything about which things people valued. About dental hygiene or shiny hair or no dandruff on the shoulders or a new refrigerator or whatever. Anyhow, ads are fantastic. But so they're really really good to contextualise your story. So we use the resource part of the library, and we ran a little workshop for any comers to see how to access the resource that the library is. We had a pop-up photography session, so a session, as I described, with documenting garments for our collection. So they weren't from a particular exhibition, but there were some garments, some of them that we've been chasing for a little while to fill some gaps, but also just an open invitation to participants to bring in something that they valued, that they've kept, that they wanted to share and wanted us to share through the Fashion Museum. So we had a photography session all day and also interviewed the people who brought the things, and so that this garment has its story as well. We did little workshops on how to sew on a button and how to take up a hem, so that when your button comes off, you don't need to throw your blouse away, or when your hem comes down, and the sellotape gives way, you can actually just stitch it. They were really great and really well patronised. So there's a lot of people who still don't know how to sew on a button. Well, they don't now, we taught them. But, so just transferring those skills, those care skills. We had Diane Ludwig, who was one of the initial trustees on the Fashion Museum, and now has her own sort of Instagram account, which is called Welcome Back Slow Fashion, where she shares bits, so very much like us, shares bits and pieces of fashion history, but also does repairing and caring for garments. And so she came in and did a presentation on stain removal, on how to mend something or alter, so making things wearable and usable again. We had a fashion parade, which was fantastic. So people who were there did this, came and showed off what they'd done. But that was preceded by 2 workshops, one by Jennifer Whitty, which was Jennifer Whitty's an academic at AUT, Auckland University of Technology, who works also in that decolonial space, and she ran a workshop on, I suppose, sort of changing a relationship to your clothing. So listening to your clothing, rebuilding that a relationship, playing with that. So it was a sort of a play session with your clothing, with your textiles. So she had that workshop. And Karishma Singh, who is a teacher at a high school here. She teaches on entrepreneurship, but she did a workshop on colour and helping people explore their relationship to colour and wearing colour. I think that was it. We also had the pop-up exhibition. So we had our exhibition there. The 2 Fashion exhibition was installed in the gallery. What else do we have? I think that was about it. We had a conversation, Jennifer and I had a conversation about the Fashion Museum. We showed our videos, all our films. We have films from that exhibition, but also a number of our exhibitions have been filmed, or little YouTube films from them. So we were able to share that. So it really was just an open day to make visible what we do.
You were talking about the funding earlier, and we know that pretty much all over the world, funding is an issue.
Yes.
How do you manage, Doris?
Well, initially, our very first seed funding, so our initial funding, we generated just from the general public. So from that LJ exhibition, we had a fundraising campaign and invited people to become friends of the Fashion Museum. So foundation fans, we called them, had different levels of funding, and that generated the money to build the website. So that funding built the Fashion Museum. The museums people who are involved in museums will know this. The thing that is difficult to fund is the operation of the institution, the infrastructure. So paying me, I haven't been paid. I've been a volunteer for all the time that the Fashion Museum has existed, but that's not really sustainable for for an operation. So it's that funding to maintain the website, the funding to pay somebody to put the content onto the website, the funding to post a letter, do some photocopying, all of those, pay some electricity or whatever. So all of those costs, ideally an office would be wonderful, but so that your fixed costs you need to cover, and that we have never been successful in achieving. What we have been successful in achieving is exhibitions. So when you curate an exhibition, I can go to various funders and say, this is what we're doing, this is what it'll cost, can we have the money to do it? That has always been successful, and we've always, within that built some operational funding, which has been what has managed to keep us going. We also did some very interesting things. So we did a fundraiser a few years ago, to again going out to the general public. Two of them actually. One for I don't think they're in here. No, there's no photos in here. But in one of the photos I sent you, so for the Moana Currents exhibition, because that exhibition was about the influence of our geography, the water on our place in the Moana, in the continents of the Pacific Ocean, because it was about these new people that we are becoming here in Aotearoa. I didn't want to use white mannequins or black mannequins or skin tone mannequins. And so we got mannequins in all different shapes and sizes, and we painted them blue. And so we had blue people wearing the clothing in that exhibition. And the money to purchase those mannequins we raised with a what's it called, a crowdfunding exercise. So sometimes we do things like that to achieve what we need to achieve. So
Many people will travel to New Zealand this year. It's a very popular spot, even though you are online. So they will be online, but they will show up in Auckland. How can they find you?
Well, they don't need to come to Auckland to find us. You can find us online at www.nzfashionmuseum.org.nz, and you can visit us at any time of day or night. We're open 24/7, and you just come in and have a tutu round, come and play, come and visit, look at the collection, look at the exhibitions, and look actually at the events page, because if you are here and we have got an exhibition on, it will be there in the events page. And follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok. We're everywhere that you look, the Fashion Museum is there.